I'm Hans Binswanger. I'm really puzzled by this proposal for universal rights to food, because how is it related to nutrition? It doesn't address diversity of the diet. It doesn't address micronutrient deficiencies. It uses one of the most inefficient and wasteful agencies which you have around the world in food, probably the worst food agency in the world, the Food Corporation of India, which is highly wasteful. And it doesn't, and then it goes through the fair price shops, which is also a racket in which people are getting ripped off in other things. So how is it that such a discussion is taking place in India? Why aren't we looking forward to a different system? A system in which we provide cash or a cash entitlement to people so that they can buy the food they want and need. I mean, it is, and get rid of all these extraordinary institutions which have been analyzed ad nauseam ever since I lived in this country in 1975. We have heard how terrible these institutions are, and now we're asking to universalize them. It just beats me that this discussion is taking place after 30 or 40 years of watching all this terrible waste and lack of impact on nutrition.
So, Himanshu, may I get you to...
Yes. Both of them are related. Let me come back to this issue. Notwithstanding the inefficiencies of Food Corporation of India and the fair price shops, there is at least a question that is being talked about, that you are growing at 8 to 9% rate of growth. There is absolutely no improvement. If incomes were the only one which were responsible for, and if people had money to buy, where per capita income has doubled in the last 6 to 7 years, probably nutrition would have improved. Thankfully, it doesn't happen that you give money to the people and their nutrition status improves. You have to do certain other things to do that. And I just give you an example of Tamil Nadu, just to remind you here of the importance of universal food security that has seen the fastest reduction in malnutrition over the years, and that is the state of Tamil Nadu doing through a universal public distribution system. If you're talking about the system of improving public distribution system, Kerala has done it. Kerala has a good public distribution system. It has reduced. One can say about it is not only about that. You can say about that it's about various other things. It's about panchayats, it's about health systems, it's about various other things. But you cannot simply ignore the role of the public distribution system in reducing nutrition. There is at least some kind of linkages you can talk about. Himachal or other states are obviously there. On the issue of cash transfers, I am simply going to say that if you're going to make it a universal cash transfer, that is, give it to almost everybody, then I don't mind. But if you're giving it only to the poor, you are basically stuck with a system as to how to identify the poor. And you are very, very, very well aware that the system of targeting in this country leads to large errors. And if you go to a system of cash, where at least the incentive to cheat is much more higher, you probably will be giving to 50% of the population, but all of us will be probably getting the cash transfers. The poor will not be getting the cash transfers. I think it's a system of targeting which is more damaging than a system of which way you deliver the good, whether in terms of cash or you're actually delivering the food to it. But I think also the point is important that India doesn't grow in all the states the same kind of food. You need to have a system of making food available to the food deficit areas from the food surplus areas. And that is a role that the public distribution system has played over a period of time. Just to ignore it because FCI has been critical is, just because the governments are corrupt doesn't mean that you throw out the government. You basically try and reform it. So I would simply say that there is enough possibility of doing this, and just simply brushing aside the question and not linking it with the issue, I don't think is the right approach to solving the issue of food security here.
No, can I just give the... Yeah.
In a way, you quickly covered it in the last sentence. I just wanted to also add to what Himanshu said, that it's not the FCI is not only an issue of bad management and corruption, it's also an issue of a kind of politics and political will. So the politics which has allowed FCI to go so bad, similar politics can also allow the food to disappear from the market and the food to appear in the market at a rate at which many people, many poor, even with cash transfer, may not be able to access. So it's a question of also getting to the whole central issue of the politics which makes FCI, allows FCI to be corrupt for such long.
Again, I don't want this to become a discussion on either the food security bill or the public distribution system. If I go back to Sunita's presentation, she had this nice categorization of what is it that we know that we don't know, and what is it that we don't know that we don't know. And I would request this audience, with your collective wisdom, to help her and the team identify, to move some items from what is it that we don't know to the category of what is it that we know that we don't know. So I'll actually give it to the gentleman in the, yes, please. You had your hand up first.
Sir, you are very categorical about the gap between the food grains production and the availability of food grains production. You have pointed out that we are having 234 million tons of food grains production, but the availability to our people is just 162 million tons. So the gap is 72 million. But in the last slide of your paper, is it possible to make available 67 million tons to cover the universal PDS or food security? So if we tap these gap, we could definitely provide. And moreover, the Honorable Supreme Court passed stricture against the central government for rotting, maybe indeliberately, in the godown. If we tap all these resources in time, we could have solved the problem of this food security. And also, that National Advisory Council should take a leaf out of Tamil Nadu as a role model for universal PDS. We have been adopting universal PDS over the years, but specifically in the last 4.5 years, the Tamil Nadu government is providing rupees 1 rupee per kg of rice for all people who are having a ration card, not specifically addressed to BPL, for all people. If the Tamil Nadu state provides with enough rice, and that too at a most significant subsidized price, why not the other state emulate from Tamil Nadu? Thank you.
He's addressed that. Let's take.
Excuse me if I sound greatly disconnected from a substantial portion of the discussions. It is agriculture for improving nutrition and health. All I am hearing for a long time, I've been a part of the advisory group, is a discussion on agriculture and body size. Your anthropometry is what is indicating in children whether you are undernourished or overnourished. There is no talk of health at any time into this thing. We are, even in body size, just focusing on the child. When there is enough data to show that the responsiveness, I don't want to use the word elasticity or plasticity, it means different things to different people. Responsiveness to food in children is barely this much, hardly anything. Why are you not looking at the responsiveness to body size in adults, which is much more responsiveness, which is not showing the connections or which it could be? I'm not surprised by decrease in the caloric intake. Look at our physical activity patterns over the years. In fact, I'm worried the other way around, that the caloric decline has not gone down further. Why? We have one scenario where our undernutrition, anthropometric undernutrition profile is sequentially declining. I don't deny there are pockets of semi-starvation or starvation around somewhere which must be handled. But what about the tsunami of overnutrition related diseases which are emerging in India? Do we need to tackle that also on a priority or not? Diabetes, hypertension, body size less. Please do consider that. Only agriculture does not mean malnutrition as defined by undernutrition. We must look at change in both the directions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question and compliments to Himanshu for a very passionate and comprehensive presentation on this, and taking from where Hans left. I'm just looking at the feasibility of it. And I do want to involve some of the people who are at the helm of affairs in terms of decision making. Prime Minister's Advisory Council member is sitting right next to me. And there is a little tug of war between NAC and PM's Economic Advisory Council. Today's newspapers are reporting that. So I'm taking a clue from there. But going back to your calculations that if we have to procure 77 million tons, the food management of the system and looking at what the marketed surplus is going to be, if we are committing that, also think that next year could be a drought year and 20 million tons production can go down, so you have to have a buffer stocking to take care of that emergency. You are looking at 90 to 100 million tons of procurement in this country. That means literally driving out the entire private sector, going back to 1972 when we literally took over the wholesale trade in wheat and rice, and then we know what happened. Within 1 year the government raised its hands and gave up. So my precaution and a strong plea is don't promise what cannot be delivered. Instead, give them 10 commodities alternative. Why they should be taking only wheat and rice? The water table in Punjab is going down and down. You're killing Punjab, literally. And then more dependence on that, it's going to be a disaster. Why not milk? Why not eggs? Why not fruits and vegetables? So you give them a choice to improve nutrition, what you have been saying. So is India stuck in 1972, or can we look forward what the global experience has been, how Brazil has done, even what Bangladesh has done, and what next door Pakistan is doing? I think time has come when we have to get somewhat away from physical handling of 100 million tons of grains to somewhat a more diversified and more innovative approaches. The challenge of identifying the poor will remain, and I would plead the member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council to give us some wisdom on that issue too. Thank you.
Okay, let me, thanks for your comments, Ashok. Let me cover two things very quickly. One is your comments, very well taken. Tamil Nadu is not entirely due to PDS, and it is a whole lot of things. And that is what I mentioned in the beginning, that neither is the food security nor is the presentation trying to ignore those issues. And I think the health expenditure, health system reforms, and other things which have been institutional deliveries, these are things which have worked very well in Tamil Nadu. And not why only talk about health, even the buses actually work much better than any other places. So that's a different thing, even though various other things have been done. But I'm just giving an example of Tamil Nadu that it's possible. It is the possibility, it's the domain of possibility which I think you should be talking about. And PDS has played a role. PDS has played a role, it has played a role, and that is why it has always been a political issue there. Tamil Nadu was the first one to start ICDS. It was the first one who talked about nutrition support programs. And it has been doing, taking care of these things. And then the recent example is that of Chhattisgarh. Forget about Tamil Nadu. Come to Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh has done remarkably well, and even the NFHS 2 and 3, there has been significant decline in nutrition status in Chhattisgarh at least. And Chhattisgarh has managed to reduce leakages. If you look at the 2004-5 NSS data to 2007 data, 2004-5 they had 50% leakages. By 2007 that has disappeared. Almost no leakages. Almost no leakages which are there. So I think also about FCI. So Chhattisgarh is doing decentralized procurement. Their economic cost has come down. They are procuring from their own, and they have been successfully shown to FCI how you can do a better food management, better food procurement and management of food. So I think there are enough examples within here. But the question that you asked is more relevant is, what is the ballpark figure that we're talking about? When I say 70% offtake, that I'm talking about is the upper limit. I think some kind of a calculation needs to be there. I am never assuming that in Punjab and Haryana, 70% of the population will be running through the public distribution shops. There are various reasons for it. Income status is one of them. Food surplus states, food surplus farmers will not be running to those shops. But if you take an example of a universal system, the Tamil Nadu PDS is not only universal, also the best managed. They have GPS, online tracking, and all those things are there. Prices are the lowest. You cannot go below 1 rupees. Now they have promised 50 paisa. But at least they're the lowest prices which are there, and that is available to everybody without discrimination. Even then it goes only to 70%. In all permutation combination looking at various states, looking at food surplus and other things, it probably will be closer to 50 to 60%. If it is close to 60%, you require only 55, 58 million tons. 58 million tons, yes, buffer stocks are there, but you don't need to procure every time for buffer stocks. Buffer stocks we have around whatever buffer stocks, keep get offloaded, then keep getting replenished. I mean, it's not that you keep on adding to the buffer stocks. I think buffer stocks can be made flexible to take into account the situations of drought. But I, under no circumstances, do see that it will be going up to more than 65, 70 million tons. And that will be in line with the rate of production, growth of production. We are now at 235 million tons, procuring something like 33% of those production. In next to 3 to 5 years, we'll be close to 250 million tons. If you procure 33% of those procurement, we probably will be close to the 65 million tons number. So I think that's something which is in the domain of feasibility that one should be talking about. Last question about the whole availability and all the production. You are very right. I mean, you have an answer to that. The government of India has been procuring, keeping it in the stocks, and therefore mopping up supply from the market, not making it available to the population. That is something which has reduced supply by roughly 25 million tons. That is the average amount of food grains which has been higher than what is the buffer and the strategic reserves together would be required. So that, I think, is where it has kept pressures on the prices as well as reducing supply. At a time when you have drought and when you have food inflation running into double digit, government withdrawing stocks from the market and hoarding it is something which is, I don't think is desirable, or at least by economic policy, anything which can be justified. So I think these are the issues which need to be, and I'm not saying that NSE has not done a work. I would say that there are good examples that they should be looking at, and they have done something which is ICDS and other things.
I haven't that. I wish I could do that, but I haven't done that.
But I think one must give credit to where the NSE has done very well. They have very good proposals on ICDS and other nutrition support programs. I think, although the Rangarajan committee doesn't even worth commenting on, that's a different matter. But I would say that there are good things which need to be where the credit should be going, and they can do a better analysis of what is the data shows as to requirement constraints.
Yeah. We're out of time, but I was wondering whether I could actually take 5 minutes to do one more round. I'll ask Sunita and Stuart. I don't see Stuart, but, there he is. One more round? Okay. This lady in the front first, please. Please, right behind you, Mandy.